Have you ever witnessed a moment so pivotal, so fraught with the weight of history that it could redefine the very essence of a nation? Today we delve into such a moment, a clash of wills and principles that unfolded in the heart of West Africa. Before we begin this gripping tale of sovereignty and courage, make sure to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and comment below with your thoughts as the story unfolds. Your engagement fuels our journey to bring you more narratives of true leadership. The morning sun, a familiar golden orb, cast long, stretching shadows across the meticulously swept courtyard of the presidential palace in Ouagadougou. Security guards, usually a picture of composed vigilance, subtly straightened their postures, a ripple of unease passing through their ranks. An unmarked military convoy, a stark anomaly in the city's rhythmic awakening, had arrived without the customary diplomatic fanfare or the preceding whispers of official visits. Its fleet of black, armored vehicles, designed for an entirely different landscape, gleamed with an almost predatory sheen against the rich red earth of Burkina Faso. The air, typically alive with the distant hum of the city and the gentle rustle of palm leaves, was now punctuated by the heavy, measured thud of polished boots echoing through the marble corridors. Aides, their faces etched with a sudden, urgent concern, whispered into their phones, their voices tight with the unexpected disruption. Meanwhile, in his modest presidential quarters, the alarm clock had sounded at precisely 5:30 a.m., as it did every morning. Ibrahim Traoré preferred these early hours, a time when Ouagadougou still slept peacefully under a canopy of stars before the bustling energy of the day claimed its hold. His day invariably began with 20 minutes of quiet prayer on his traditional woven mat, a sacred ritual where he sought guidance and clarity for the day ahead. The harmonious, resonant calls to prayer from nearby mosques provided a serene backdrop to his morning reflection, weaving a tapestry of spiritual grounding. His breakfast was a simple affair: humble porridge and mint tea, the very same meal that had nourished him since childhood. The profound humility of these moments was not merely a habit, it was a deliberate anchor, rooting him firmly before he faced the intricate complexities of governing a nation. By 6:15 a.m., his mind, already sharp and focused, was deeply immersed in reviewing security briefings, even as the first tentative rays of sunlight began to paint the palace walls in hues of soft gold. His desk, a testament to his dedication, was laden with reports from every corner of Burkina Faso, mining updates, critical education statistics, and comprehensive security assessments. The president took notes by hand, a deeply ingrained habit from his military training that helped him process information with an almost meditative depth, ensuring every detail was absorbed before a decision was even contemplated. The morning air, now carrying the nascent sounds of the city awakening, vendors setting up their stalls, the excited chatter of children heading to school, served as a constant, visceral reminder of the people whose lives, whose very destinies depended on his leadership. At 7:30 a.m., Traoré met with his cabinet ministers in the conference room, its grand mahogany table bearing the scars of countless important decisions made by leaders long past. Today's agenda, focused on infrastructure development and agricultural reforms to strengthen food security, was suddenly overshadowed. The carefully structured morning, a bulwark of routine and purpose, shattered abruptly like a stone violently thrown into still water. Traoré's aide, his face pale and eyes wide with undisguised concern, knocked urgently on the conference room door. Through the tall windows, the president could clearly see the lingering dust cloud still settling from the convoy's arrival in the courtyard below. His ministers, sensing the shift, fell silent, their eyes instinctively following his every movement. The weight of presidential responsibility, a burden far heavier than any of his military decorations, settled upon his shoulders. This was the precise moment when the predictable rhythm of routine gave way to the unpredictable, demanding realities of leadership. The chief of staff burst through the mahogany doors, his voice tight with concern. "Mr. President, we have a situation." The smell of traditional morning tea still lingered, but the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. General Harrison Matthews, his uniform crisp despite the African heat,
stepped out of the lead vehicle, his steel gray eyes surveying the palace grounds with the calculating gaze of someone utterly accustomed to getting his way. He had flown directly from Washington, carrying orders that possessed the power to reshape West African geopolitics, and his polished boots, clicking against the stone steps, announced his arrival to anyone within earshot. Traoré closed the agricultural report and stood slowly, his mind already shifting into full presidential mode. The young leader had faced many challenges since taking power, but none quite like this. His aide handed him a hastily prepared briefing about the unexpected visitor. "Show him to the blue room," Traoré instructed, his voice calm but resonating with an unyielding firmness. The weight of leadership settled upon his shoulders as he prepared to face whatever demand awaited him.
The Blue Room, a chamber that had witnessed decades of pivotal diplomatic encounters, seemed to hold its breath. Its walls, adorned with portraits of Burkina Faso's founding fathers and artifacts steeped in national history, silently observed as General Matthews entered. He moved with the unshakable confidence of someone representing the world's most powerful military, his polished boots clicking a sharp rhythm against the traditional tile floor. His steel-gray eyes, ever analytical, swept across the room's African artifacts and independence memorabilia, assessing the strategic environment with a practiced gaze. Traoré stood behind his desk, his posture erect yet relaxed, embodying the quiet dignity of his office and the sovereignty he represented. The afternoon light filtered through the intricately carved wooden shutters, casting intricate, shifting patterns across the rich Persian rug. The air conditioning hummed quietly, a stark contrast to the palpable tension that filled the space, thick and heavy like the desert heat before a storm. "Mr. President," the general began, his voice carrying the distinct authority of Washington's corridors of power. "I appreciate you making time for this urgent discussion about regional security cooperation." His briefcase, a sleek, dark rectangle, sat on the mahogany coffee table, containing documents that, if enacted, could irrevocably alter West Africa's future. Traoré gestured towards the leather chairs arranged around a traditional wooden table, its surface carved by local artisans, a subtle assertion of cultural pride. "General Matthews, welcome to Burkina Faso," he replied, his English precise, yet carrying the subtle, melodic rhythms of his native Moor language. The president's calm demeanor masked a profound awareness that this was no ordinary diplomatic visit. The stakes were immeasurably higher. The general's eyes continued their analytical study of the room's decor, the traditional masks hanging alongside modern artwork, symbols of a nation striving to balance its rich heritage with the inexorable march of progress. "Your country faces significant security challenges," Matthews continued, opening his briefcase with deliberate, almost theatrical precision. Traoré, ever observant, noted how the Americans' hands moved with military efficiency, each gesture calculated for maximum impact. The president, maintaining his composure, poured traditional tea from a silver pot, the familiar, comforting ritual helping him to remain grounded. Steam rose from the cups like incense in a sacred ceremony, momentarily softening the tense atmosphere. "I'm here to discuss how the United States can help stabilize this region through strategic partnership," the general announced. His tone was not an invitation, but a statement imbued with the kind of language that had often preceded military interventions across the globe. Traoré set down his teacup with deliberate care, the soft clink echoing in the suddenly quiet room, a small sound in a moment of immense gravity. The president's eyes met the general's directly, conveying a complex blend of respect and an unwavering resolve. This singular moment, he knew, would define not just their conversation, but potentially the very future sovereignty of his nation. The weight of ancestral wisdom and contemporary responsibility converged in his steady gaze. General Matthews leaned forward, his steel-gray eyes narrowing as he opened a folder starkly marked "Classified." The documents inside contained high-resolution satellite images of Burkina Faso's mineral-rich regions and strategic locations near its borders. "Mr. President, we've identified optimal sites for a permanent U.S. military installation," he stated, with the directness of someone utterly accustomed to compliance. His finger traced across a detailed map, pointing to areas near gold mines and uranium deposits. The room's temperature seemed to drop, despite the African heat outside the windows. Traoré's expression remained composed, but his hands subtly tightened around his teacup. This facility would house approximately 5,000 personnel and provide regional counterterrorism capabilities, Matthews continued, his voice carrying the undeniable authority of Pentagon authority. The general's presentation included polished PowerPoint slides showcasing proposed base layouts and enticing economic incentives. "In return, we're prepared to offer $2 billion in military aid and infrastructure development." His tone suggested this was a generous, almost irresistible offer that few nations could refuse. The American flag pin on his uniform caught the light as he gestured toward the financial projections. Traoré listened silently, his mind meticulously processing the profound implications of foreign troops on sovereign soil. The general's rhetoric then subtly shifted, transitioning into veiled threats cleverly disguised as regional security concerns. "Instability in the Sahel requires decisive action, and frankly, your current military capabilities are insufficient." His words, though seemingly advisory, carried the implicit, chilling message that refusal might have severe consequences for American support. The briefing materials included intelligence reports about neighboring countries that had rejected similar proposals, a silent warning of the isolation that could follow. Matthews spoke of partnership, while his documents outlined terms that bore a close resemblance to occupation rather than genuine cooperation. The president noticed how the general's language became more forceful, more demanding, with each passing minute. This was pressure diplomacy at its most calculated, a masterclass in strategic intimidation. "Time is a luxury we don't have, Mr. President," Matthews declared, closing the folder with an air of finality. His message was unmistakably clear. This decision needed to be made quickly, without extended deliberation or consultation. The general's eyes swept the room, as if already envisioning American flags flying over Burkinabe soil. "Other regional partners have already committed to similar arrangements," he added, invoking the potent fear of isolation. Traoré recognized the classic tactics of superpower diplomacy, the carrot-and-stick approach, expertly wrapped in a cloak of manufactured urgency. The moment of truth was rapidly approaching, and the president knew with absolute certainty that his response would echo through the annals of history. "General Matthews, I need a moment to consult with my advisors," Traoré announced, his voice steady despite the immense weight of the decision before him. The American's jaw tightened slightly, unaccustomed to such delays when presenting what he considered to be such generous offers to smaller nations. The president stood gracefully, his military bearing evident as he moved toward the door with purposeful, dignified steps. "Please enjoy some refreshments while we discuss your proposal," he added, gesturing toward the traditional snacks arranged on silver platters. The general's eyes followed him suspiciously, sensing that this particular African leader might not respond as predictably as others had. The sound of Traoré's footsteps echoed through the corridor, a quiet testament to his unwavering dignity as he left the room.
In his private office, a sanctuary overlooking the bustling streets of Ouagadougou, President Traoré stood before a large window. Children in school uniforms walked past, their laughter a bright counterpoint to the city's hum, while vendors sold fresh mangoes and hand-woven textiles under the shade of ancient baobab trees.
His chief of staff and defense minister waited anxiously, their faces reflecting the profound gravity of the situation that had just unfolded. "They want to establish a permanent military base," Traoré explained, his voice carrying the immense burden of leadership. The afternoon sun, now lower in the sky, cast long shadows across the city he had sworn to protect and serve, a visual metaphor for the potential encroachment on his nation's freedom. His advisors exchanged worried glances, their expressions mirroring a shared understanding of the implications of such a momentous decision. "Sir, the Americans have made similar offers to Chad and Niger," his defense minister reported, spreading intelligence files across the mahogany desk. The documents, stark and revealing, laid bare a clear pattern of military expansion across the Sahel region, each proposed base strategically positioned near valuable resources. Those who refused faced economic sanctions and diplomatic isolation, the chief of staff added grimly, his words a chilling reminder of the consequences of defiance. Traoré studied the maps, which depicted American military presence spreading like an intricate web across the African continent. The president's finger traced the borders of his beloved nation, each line on the map representing the hard-won sovereignty his people had fought so fiercely to achieve. The weight of history pressed down on his shoulders as he contemplated the crossroads before him, a decision that would define his legacy. He walked to his bookshelf, his movements deliberate, and pulled out a worn copy of Speeches by Thomas Sankara, his revered predecessor who had tragically died defending African dignity. The pages, yellowed with age, contained profound wisdom about sovereignty, self-determination, and the unwavering courage required to stand against foreign domination. "What would Sankara do?" he whispered to himself, his fingers tracing the revolutionary leader's powerful words. His advisors watched silently, understanding that their president was seeking guidance not from contemporary political manuals, but from the enduring spirit of the past, to navigate the present crisis. The rhythmic ticking of the antique clock on the wall seemed to echo the urgency of the moment, demanding decisive leadership. In this quiet reflection, amidst the whispers of history, Traoré found the clarity he desperately needed to respond with authentic African leadership. The portrait of Thomas Sankara, a silent sentinel, gazed down from the wall as Traoré opened the leather-bound book to a familiar passage. "A soldier without political or ideological training is a potential criminal," he read aloud, the words resonating with Sankara's vision of true leadership. His advisors intently listened as the president shared the revolutionary's vision of an Africa free from foreign manipulation. The afternoon light illuminated the aged pages, each word a testament to the arduous struggle for genuine independence. Sankara himself had faced similar pressures from global powers before his assassination in 1987. A stark reminder of the sacrifices demanded by principle. The president felt the immense weight of his predecessor's sacrifice and the profound responsibility to honor that legacy. Patrice Lumumba refused to bow to foreign interests in the Congo, Traoré continued, his voice growing stronger with each historical reference, a litany of defiance. The defense minister nodded gravely, remembering how the Congolese leader's unwavering stand had ultimately cost him his life. "Kwame Nkrumah warned us about neo-colonialism disguised as partnership," the president added, closing the book with reverence. His chief of staff spread out newspaper clippings, showing how other African leaders had faced similar crossroads, their choices shaping the continent's destiny. The office walls seemed to whisper the stories of those who had chosen sovereignty over security guarantees, those fallen heroes who had paid the ultimate price for refusing to compromise their nation's independence. Traoré walked to a framed photograph of the 1960 independence ceremony, a moment frozen in time when Burkinabe flags first proudly flew over free soil. "Our grandfathers didn't fight for independence so we could trade it away for military protection," he said firmly, his voice imbued with a quiet fire.
His advisors saw the unwavering determination burning in their leader's eyes, the same passion that had driven him to lead the recent revolution. The photograph captured a moment of pure joy and boundless hope, when the nation's future seemed limitless. Traoré touched the glass gently, feeling connected to those who dreamed of a truly sovereign Burkina Faso. The sacrifices of previous generations demanded that he choose the path of dignity over convenience. Outside the palace walls, Mamoudou adjusted his bicycle, laden with fresh vegetables, as he listened to the radio crackling with news of the mysterious American visitor. His weathered hands gripped the handlebars tighter as the announcer mentioned discussions about foreign military cooperation. "We didn't overthrow the last government just to invite new masters," he muttered to his friend, Fatima, who sold vibrant textiles nearby. The market buzzed with conversations about sovereignty, rumors spreading through the city like wildfire. Children played football in the dusty street, their innocent laughter mixing with the serious discussions of their elders. The scent of grilled meat and spices filled the air as vendors continued their daily routines, a testament to the resilience of life despite the political tension. At the university, Professor Aminata Konate addressed her political science students about the delicate balance between security and independence. Her classroom overlooked the main boulevard where protesters had marched during the revolution that brought Traoré to power. "Foreign military bases are economic traps disguised as security partnerships," she explained, drawing parallels to colonial history. Her students listened intently, understanding that their generation's future hung in the balance of today's decisions. The chalkboard behind her displayed quotes from Pan-African leaders who had warned about the insidious nature of neo-colonialism. The afternoon heat made the classroom stuffy, but the intensity of the discussion kept everyone focused. In the neighborhoods surrounding the palace, ordinary citizens gathered around transistor radios to hear updates about the American convoy. Elderly men playing checkers under the shade of mango trees shared stories of French colonial rule and its lasting impact. "These Americans speak of partnership, but their partnerships always benefit them more than us," observed Bukari, a retired teacher. His companions nodded knowingly, having witnessed decades of foreign intervention across Africa. The sound of prayer calls echoed across the city, reminding everyone of their shared values and cultural identity. Even children selling water sachets paused to listen when adults discussed the president's crucial decision. The collective voice of the people seemed to rise from every corner of Ouagadougou like incense from a sacred fire. Taxi drivers honked their horns in rhythmic patterns that spelled out sovereignty in local Morse code. Market women sang traditional songs about independence while sorting their goods for the evening rush. The city's heartbeat pulsed with the unspoken message that true leadership means listening to the people's deepest aspirations. From the poorest quarters to the university campus, citizens trusted their president to choose dignity over dollars. Their voices carried the wisdom of generations who had learned that freedom, once lost, is rarely regained. Traoré returned to his desk and spread out a detailed map of Burkina Faso, his fingers tracing the borders his people had defended for generations. The proposed American base locations were marked in red, each dot representing a potential compromise of national sovereignty. His advisors watched silently as their president studied the geographical implications with the precision of a military strategist. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the map, creating a visual reminder of how foreign presence could overshadow local authority. "Every square kilometer of this land was paid for with the blood of our ancestors," he said quietly. The weight of history and responsibility converged in this moment of crucial decision-making. The president picked up his secure phone and dialed the number of his closest confidant, the elderly imam who had guided him through previous crises. "Respected teacher, I need your counsel on a matter that will define our nation's future," he began respectfully. The imam's voice carried the wisdom of 70 decades, reminding Traoré that leadership means choosing the harder path when it serves the greater good. "A tree that bends too far in the storm will break,
but one that stands firm will weather any tempest, the spiritual leader advised. Their conversation lasted only minutes, but the guidance provided clarity that hours of political analysis could not achieve. The president felt his resolve strengthen as he prepared to face the consequences of principled leadership. Traoré stood and walked to the window overlooking the presidential gardens where his children sometimes played after school. The sight of the playground equipment reminded him that this decision would shape the world his family would inherit. His wife had often said that
the clock on his desk showed 4:30 p.m. as Traoré made his final decision, imbued with the clarity of someone who had found his moral compass. He called his chief of staff and defense minister back into the office, his expression conveying the profound gravity of the moment. "Prepare a statement for the press," he instructed, his voice steady despite the immense magnitude of what he was about to announce. His military training had taught him that the hardest battles are often fought not with weapons, but with words and unyielding principles. His advisors sensed with a deep certainty that history was about to witness another African leader choosing sovereignty over security guarantees. The die was cast, and there would be no turning back from this defining moment. Traoré strode back into the Blue Room, where General Matthews sat rigidly, his impatience evident in the incessant drumming of his fingers against the polished mahogany table. The American had spent the past hour reviewing his briefing materials and making encrypted calls to Washington, his frustration a palpable presence in the room. The president's footsteps echoed with quiet authority as he approached his chair, his military bearing unmistakable despite his calm demeanor. The afternoon light had shifted, casting new, different shadows across the room's traditional artifacts and independence memorabilia, as if the very space was holding its breath. Matthews looked up expectantly, his steel-gray eyes searching for any sign of compliance in the young African leader's composed face. The moment of truth had arrived, and both men understood that this conversation would irrevocably reshape diplomatic relations between their nations. "General Matthews, I have carefully considered your proposal," Traoré began, his voice carrying the full weight of presidential authority. He remained standing, a subtle but powerful assertion of his position as host and sovereign leader. The American leaned forward, anticipating the acceptance that his government had confidently expected from this small African nation. "Your offer of military partnership demonstrates America's strategic interest in our region," the president continued diplomatically, his tone remaining respectful but firm, reflecting the careful balance required in international diplomacy. The general's confidence began to waver, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his features as he sensed something unexpected in the president's measured delivery. "However, after consulting with my advisors and reflecting on our national interests, I must respectfully decline," Traoré announced with unwavering clarity. The words hung in the air like thunder before a storm, their implications reverberating through the ornate room. Matthews's face darkened with surprise and a barely concealed anger, his military training unable to mask his profound shock. "Mr. President, I don't think you fully understand the implications of this decision," he said, his voice now carrying thinly veiled threats. The American's composure cracked as he realized that his superpower's influence had met an immovable object. Traoré's expression remained serene, embodying the dignity of a leader who had chosen principle over pressure. "General, I understand perfectly," the president replied, his calm tone contrasting sharply with Matthews's rising tension. "Burkina Faso values its friendship with the United States, but we cannot compromise our sovereignty for any price." His words carried the authority of someone speaking not just for himself, but for generations of Burkinabe who had fought and sacrificed for independence. The general gathered his documents with barely controlled fury, realizing that his mission had failed spectacularly. "This decision will have consequences, Mr. President," Matthews warned, his diplomatic mask finally slipping completely. Traoré stood unmoved, his response about to demonstrate what true leadership looked like in the face of superpower intimidation. "General Matthews, let me share something with you," Traoré said, his voice carrying the quiet strength of someone who had found his moral center. He gestured toward the portraits of African independence leaders adorning the Blue Room's walls, each face representing a profound choice between principle and convenience. These men taught us that true leadership means standing firm when others expect you to bend. The American general's jaw tightened as he realized this young president would not be intimidated by threats or consequences. The afternoon light streaming through the windows seemed to illuminate Traoré's face with an almost ethereal dignity. His words carried the weight of history and the promise of a future built on sovereign foundations. We appreciate America's friendship, but friendship cannot exist between equals when one party demands submission from the other. The president continued with diplomatic precision. His military training had taught him that respect is earned through strength, not granted through weakness. Matthews shifted uncomfortably in his chair, unused to such direct challenges to American hegemony from smaller nations. Burkina Faso will chart its own course in regional security, partnering with those who respect our sovereignty. The general's briefcase snapped shut with finality, his mission's failure now undeniable to his superiors in Washington. The sound echoed through the room like a door closing on an era of unquestioned American dominance. As Matthews prepared to leave, his face flushed with a mixture of anger and grudging respect for this unexpected adversary. "You're making a grave mistake, Mr. President," he said, his voice carrying the weight of superpowered displeasure. Traoré extended his hand in a gesture of diplomatic courtesy, showing that personal respect could coexist with political disagreement. "History will judge whether standing for our principles was a mistake or an act of courage," the president replied calmly. The general's handshake was brief but firm, acknowledging the strength he had encountered in this unlikely adversary. His departure would mark the beginning of a new chapter in U.S.-African relations. The sound of the American convoy's engines faded into the distance as Traoré stood on the palace balcony, watching the dust settle on the red earth below. His chief of staff approached with the prepared press statement, ready to announce the decision to the world. The president's phone buzzed with messages from regional leaders, some congratulating him, while others warned of potential consequences. Children played in the streets below, their laughter rising like music from a free nation. The sun was setting over Ouagadougou, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples that matched the colors of the Burkinabe flag. In choosing sovereignty over security guarantees, Traoré had demonstrated that true leadership sometimes means walking alone into an uncertain future. Ibrahim Traoré's unwavering response to American pressure proved that true leadership means choosing sovereignty over convenience even when facing a superpower's demands. His courage echoes through history as a powerful reminder that dignity cannot be purchased, and true freedom is a legacy fought for and fiercely protected. What's your take on this bold stand? If you found this story compelling, please like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to our channel for more narratives of courage and leadership. Don't forget to comment below with your thoughts on President Traoré's decision and the implications for global diplomacy. Your engagement helps us bring these vital stories to light.